Good morning, students. In today's tutorial for the revision, the topic and the chapter is our environment. See, environment word is used for the surrounding in which an organism is living. Anything which is around the organism is its environment. And when we elaborate the term environment, we find there are two types of components which we will be getting. Some will be the living components, which we call as the biotic components, and some are non-living, which we call as the abiotic components. Now, the biotic components or the living components are all the living organisms which are surrounding us, including plants and animals, even microorganisms, and some other organisms in the form of decomposers. And abiotic components are the non-living components like your soil, water, air, etc. Now, whenever these two components they interact, whenever there is an interaction between these two components, interaction, and always the living components they interact with the non-living components of their surrounding. This interaction is termed as ecosystem. Ecosystem. So the term ecosystem is basically the interaction of the living organisms of a surrounding with their abiotic factors. The biotic and abiotic factors of different surroundings are not same. They differ from place to place, right? And that is why the type of interaction will also not remain same. And due to this, the ecosystems are of different types also. Ecosystem is basically of two main types. Some ecosystems which are present in the nature and they are being governed by the nature itself. They are called as the natural ecosystems. Natural ecosystems. And some ecosystems which are man-made. And man-made because there is a intervention of the human activity there, and they are called as the artificial ecosystems. So these are the two main categories of ecosystems which we will be getting. Always remember, ecosystem is an interaction of the biotic communities with the abiotic factors, right? If we want to give some examples of the natural ecosystems, so the forest is a natural ecosystem, and river, pond, lakes, anything which is naturally occurred, that is a natural ecosystem. Anything which is man-made, and man-made is what is known as artificial. There is one more term for it. They are also called as anthropogenic, and that is because of the human activity. Example is aquarium. Example of man-made ecosystem is the agricultural field, etc. The largest ecosystems are known as biomes. Biomes. So the term biome comes from the ecosystems which are on a larger scale. A big grassland, a tropical region, an ocean. These all will be included in biomes, and biomes are the larger form of ecosystems, and several biomes they group with each other to form a larger part of the earth where the life is existing, that we call as biosphere. Biosphere. So biosphere term is used for the group of all biomes which are present on the earth where life is possible. The ecosystem is a self-sustaining mechanism if it is natural, and if it is artificial or man-made, so there is intervention of human activity. But man-made ecosystems are not always perfect ecosystems because they are lacking some of the factors which are required for the process of proper governing of the ecosystems. Coming to the components of ecosystem, so ecosystem components are the same, biotic and the abiotic. When we talk about the biotic components of the ecosystem, so the biotic component of the ecosystem it comprises of three different types of organisms. So biotic components of the ecosystem, there will be three different types of organisms. And which are they? These are in the form of three different types of organisms, depending upon what type of activity or functioning they do in the ecosystem. Some of the biotic components of the ecosystem, they are called as producers. Some are called as consumers, and some are called as decomposers. Producers, consumers, and decomposers. These three are the different types of biotic components of the ecosystem. Producers will be those who are able to produce the food. These are basically autotrophic organisms. They can be microscopic also in the form of blue-green algae and cyanobacteria. But when we talk about producers, the very common example which we give is for the autotrophic green plants, which are able to produce their food by the process of photosynthesis. Some can be chemoautotrophs also. This we have discussed in the previous chapter of life processes, where we talked about different types of nutritions, and there we have mentioned the autotrophic and the heterotrophic mode of nutritions. Autotrophs could be photoautotrophs also, and they could be chemoautotrophs also, right? But those who are able to produce their food in any ecosystem, the biotic members, they are called as producers. The best example are the plants. Even you will include the blue-green algae and cyanobacteria also. Consumers are those who depend on producers for their food. And consumers also belong to different types. And this we have mentioned in the previous topic also, that some are primary consumers, some are secondary consumers, some are tertiary consumers. So they are called as primary consumers, secondary consumers, and the tertiary consumers. And this is basically on the type of food habit they obtain or they use to get their food. Primary consumers, basically consumers are those who depend on producers for their food, right? And in ecosystem, organisms are depending on each other for getting food. One organism is a source of food for the other organism, right? And the place which the organisms occupy for getting their food in the ecosystem is called as their trophic levels. And different trophic levels, when they are combined with each other, they make a food chain. And this we have also mentioned, that different food chains of an ecosystem, they are interconnected to each other and they form a network of food chain, what we call as the food web. Examples are important and that you have to remember. What are primary consumers? So these are herbivorous organisms who are directly depending upon the producers. Examples are the grass-eating animals. Secondary consumers are those who depend on primary consumers for their food. And these are carnivorous organisms like the lion and tiger, which are present in the jungles. Tertiary consumers are those who obtain their food from the secondary consumers. So what we find here, that consumers are basically depending upon the previous organism for their food. Decomposers are purely different from all these organisms. These are those organisms who are basically saprotrophic in nutrition. They obtain their food from the dead remains of different plants and animals. Basically, they are required for the recycling of materials. Recycling. And decomposers are not present in your man-made ecosystems or artificial ecosystems. That's why we say that the man-made ecosystem is not a perfect ecosystem. So this is a brief description about the different components which we get in the ecosystem and the biotic members. In coming lectures, we will be discussing about some other topics like the food chains, then your 10% law for the transfer of energy from one trophic level to the other trophic levels, then some topic of environment related to the pollution, then global warming, greenhouse effect, ozone depletion, what is the importance of ozone. It's a very, very simple chapter, but the weightage of this chapter in your coming board examination will be around 4 to 5 marks. So it's not a very that type of chapter that you can ignore. It's important with respect to your coming examination. So keep on studying, students. Thank you and have a nice day.